Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I'm going to try a couple different things today, so let me know if you notice. Good afternoon. It is noon Pacific time, and I'm here entertaining y'all with a Wednesday review wrap up. I've got 6 books for you today. There's only 5 on the thumbnail, and I will show the 6th one at the end, and you will see why there's nothing on the thumbnail. But yeah, so 6 books today. It's getting to be like every 2 weeks I do these Wednesday wraps, and that means like 10 to 12 books a month. So pretty good. Feeling pretty good about that. I've got some nonfiction, I've got some mystery, I've got some historical, and I've got some romance, spicy romance. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And maybe one of these will have your name on it. I've got a question in the chat for a question of the day to create some controversy. I don't know, just to discuss at the end because I had this weird thought this morning. But welcome, and there's the question. How do cemeteries make you feel? We'll discuss at the end because I had a really interesting experience this morning. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm going to first say thank you to, I got some book mail. I got a whole bunch of great mail yesterday. And this is one of the things I got in a giveaway. So I haven't read 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, or 7 if you're in the UK. But Stuart Turton is a big author, and he was on The Blaze, not an interview I was producing. So I dropped in and left a comment, and I won The Last Murder at the End of the World. So this is like newly minted copy, and look, it's got turquoise edges, which is really cool, and it's got, oh, I'm using that as a bookmark, it's got end papers that are like a really cool map. So I read a few pages. I had to dive in when I got this, and it's very exciting. So thank you to Sourcebooks, one of my favorite publishers of books, and I'm excited to jump into that, like new minted, very exciting. And Blaze does interviews multiple times a week, and a lot of them have giveaways. So if you're not following A Mighty Blaze, hey, you could win too. Pretty cool. Say hi to Shannon in the chat. Hello, Shannon. I just flew by your sprints earlier this morning and dropped a like and a hello. Shannon is making friends with the like button. I'm going to star her answer about cemeteries. Anita is here, and I'm going to talk about her answer later as well. Jim is here. Hello. I have a watch later list Jim video, which is not about the George and Readathon. It's something about Booktube, but I don't remember the title. I just saw it fly by once again yesterday. So we're going to do the romance first because it's an overlay. We'll start and end. We'll bookend our reviews with the overlays. So this is Do Your Worst by Rosie Dannon, who I have not read before. And it is voiced by I believe someone who I just talked about on Sunday. Let's see. Shane East, yes, and Saskia Marleveld. Big names in spicy romance audio world. So that's very exciting. This intrigued me because, well, first of all, thank you to Libro.fm, the sweetest smelling audiobook purveyor in the world. But this intrigued me because it's set in a castle in Scotland, and the castle's got a curse. And the guy is there to sort of do a podunk project in the backyard, in the not backyard, in the boneyard of his archaeological field, which is like, there's nothing interesting happening here, but I just had a huge scandal. I am in the black books of everyone in my field. I have to like start at the bottom again. And it's wrapped up in his family in an interesting way. And she is a curse breaker from America. She's come over to be hired to do the job, which is to break the curse on this castle so that they can develop it into a tourist destination. So you've got the Scotland setting. You've got like people who are going to be enemies. You've got a clear enemies to lovers progression. I really enjoyed this. The narrators did a great job. I liked his choices slightly better than hers. But yeah, the curse breaking stuff was like very well thought out in terms of lore. and the stuff that he has to confront in his family background was very well thought out as well. So I liked those pieces. And I feel like there were a few more twists than I needed or wanted before, like the resolution. The things kept going wrong, and it just kept going a few more times. But like Lord of the Rings, maybe you want 13 endings before you're ready to be done. I can understand that as well. So, highly rated, fun, enemies to lovers, do your worst. And I don't know if Rosie Dannon, I don't think I've heard her name before, so I'll have to look if she has a backlist. So that was my audiobook for the month. And let me see. Yeah. Wait, banners, brand. There we go. Take it down, go to the next one. Yeah, Jim is saying 10 Commandments of Booktube there. It was a Booktube themed. Yeah. So I'm excited to watch that, Jim. So next we've got a mystery. I'm just going to go down a pile here. Death at Gallows Green, a Victorian mystery by Robin Page. Robin Page, suspicious pen name. Yes, you would be right. That is a pen name. It is the pen name for a husband and wife co-writing together as Robin Page, Susan Wittig Albert, which is a name I know pretty well. She's pretty famous, and Bill Albert. So Susan Wittig Albert is the author of the China Bales Mysteries, which I guess is another pen name, Cozy Mystery series. Bill Albert is the co-author with his wife of more than 60 novels for young adults. So this is the second novel in the Victorian series they write together. They live in the Texas Hill Country. Texas, y'all, and they're writing Victorian cozy mysteries. So what did I think about it as someone who is really into Victorian history? Well, they took a person from real history, which is Beatrix Potter, and made her a pretty significant supporting character in this book. I don't know if they did in the previous one. It sounded like no, because she meets the main character here. But so that was interesting. I think they brought in interesting aspects of her real life. And so you could read this and be intrigued and find out more and not be like, oh, they totally painted her in a different light and that was cheating. I think they do a pretty good job in this. In terms of the mystery and the murder and all that, I read this in a day. So let's see. I tore through it. How does it start? It doesn't start with the body. Oh, right. So the main character is an American descended from Irish parents in New York. She goes to visit a couple of aunts in not Suffolk, Sussex, Essex, actually. And I was a little cockeyed at some of the accents at the beginning because I was like, that does not sound like Essex. That sounds like Yorkshire. But anyway, so she goes to visit her couple of aunts in England, and they die and leave this grand manor to her. So she goes from struggling ghostwriter in the States to lady of the manor who doesn't fit in England, which is very convenient. It's a cozy mystery. It's going to be convenient, right? And so she doesn't fit in, but she's trying to find some exciting stuff. She's trying to continue to write because she likes it. And yeah, there's like a thing that happens that's a murder, and she gets to know a family better who are under her care, and they are involved in the mystery. And like, it's pretty good in terms of clues, and you can see like where it's shaping up to be. So I think it's pretty true to type in terms of a cozy mystery. There's a few like regional things that I would have been a little bit more of a stickler on, but I really did enjoy this. I like the characters as sort of modern feminine heroines and enjoyed it a lot. As I said, tore through it in one day. I don't know that I'll seek out more of the series. I found this on sort of a whim. But if I see Susan Wittig Albert, who is probably more easily found, then I might pick her up if I'm in that mood. So that's number 2. We've got Mrs. Peacock in the chat. Hello. They're reading The House of the Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne, going for a classic American novel. She says, pretty book. The cozy mystery? Okay, that's not really my type of cover, but I like that someone else likes it. And Jocelyn Carter in the chat. Welcome. All right, so then I'm going to go over briefly book 3, because I think I will be talking with Leah Lindemann about this book that we are sort of buddy reading on Sundays live. So this is The Phoenix Crown by Kate Quinn and Janie Chang. These are co-writers. I talked about this during one of my AAPI feature live streams, and I was excited because I just got this book as a gift. More on that in a second. And in the historical fiction book haul, maybe Leah saw it and she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get that. Let's read it." And so I read it in a few days, and then she had some things to get through before she could do it. So she started it a couple days ago, and I've been waiting. So I'm gonna be listening for her updates via Instagram, I believe, and then we'll see if we can compare notes on the live stream and what we felt about it at different points. So basically, The Phoenix Crown is this is the kind of cover I like, Mrs. Peacock. So it's shiny, there's gold, there's like definitely a different historical era represented on the cover. So it's a 1906 earthquake book, and they say that very clearly at the beginning, because like the way the chapters are noted is in a timeline according to the earthquake. So chapter 2, April 5th, 1906, 12 days, 23 hours, 36 minutes before the earthquake. So like there's an earthquake, it's coming. And so it doesn't take away from the plot pacing, but it was an interesting choice, and I'm not sure why they do that, because based on the action, whether someone is going, or you think whether someone is going to be there or not there for the earthquake. So maybe that's like the way to throw in a twist or something. But anyway, interesting choice. The characters are, so I think the main strength of the partnership is that we have a writer who is much more known for tension and paciness and excitement, and that's Kate Quinn. I've read The Huntress, and I did that on audiobook, and it was fantastic. Could not put it down, like thrilling, historical World War II novel. And then Janie Chang, who is a person who writes about Asian folklore, Asian culture coming into our modern times and really connecting it with sort of deeper interior characters. So for me, it was interesting to see, because I've read one of each of these women's books, and to see them write something together, I was like, oh, okay, I can't see, like, I don't know their writing as well as possible to be able to like pick apart who wrote what. And I don't know if that's how they wrote it, but it's like, it's in the middle, right? So Library of Legends by Janie Chang was much more slow, thought out, interior, and sort of gentle. And Huntress was more like bang, 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 action and suspense, and like minor chords of violins in the background. So there were great moments of like cliffhangers on chapter endings, and action and people intersecting in an exciting way. But I got great backstories as well. I feel like it was a little tamped down. I think I probably would have liked the voltage up a little bit, if that metaphor makes any sense to anyone. I incline more toward Kate Quinn's style than Janie Chang's, but I did really like this book. Is it a mystery? I'm not going to call it a mystery. I don't think it's going to be part of a series. Basically, we have 4 characters, 2 are POV characters, and we get to witness some true events and like some things that happen to be occurring during the earthquake, and then the aftermath of the earthquake, and justice for those events that happened to occur during that thing. And those are all fictitious. So very interesting. And I liked the pieces that I could get about the people that were real that were included too. That was really fun. So that was my non-spoiler review. And if Leah is watching this, weigh in. We'll talk to you more about it with spoilers in part of the stream on Sunday. So that's 3 books down. We've got a cat paw in the chat. Hello. Book covers for all. Yeah, everyone can get something that they like. BRB. She comes in and says BRB. Okay. So we're halfway done, which is where I stop and say, hey, if you like listening to book reviews of books you've never heard of or new books, and here's where I'll talk about new books, subscribe to the channel. Normally, you will see me pulling books off the shelves that have been on for like a year, 2 years, 7 years. I'm going through a big declutter, y'all. So I'm letting go a lot of these ancient TBR books, these TBR veterans, some have called them. And so it turns out that this book review haul, this group, is all books that I got in the last month, which is really hilarious. So I've let go of a lot of books without reading them. And lately, in the past 2 weeks, all the books that I've read have been ones that have just come in that I wanted to read right away. So, Do Your Worst was an arc on Libro.fm, and The Cozy Mystery was an impulse purchase at the used bookstore when I was bringing books back to sell. Phoenix Crown was a birthday gift. And then the next three, it was a independent bookstore purchase, a library book, and a little free library book that I just happened to find like a few days ago and already read. So yeah, that's not like me, but apparently that's the season of life I'm in. So I just thought that was funny. Alrighty, so that didn't work. I don't know. It's working again. Okay, good. My cursor was not working. All right, so the second half. I've got the one that Shannon was interested in from last live stream. So this is the one I found on Independent Bookstore Day. It's a Margaret Atwood book, but it's a nonfiction. And I hear you going, oh, what? I didn't know Margaret Atwood wrote nonfiction. Is it a writing book? Well, it's called Payback. So no, it's about debt and the shadow side of wealth. And what I said about it was that it's very silly, but also profound. So here's what I would say about Payback. She published this book, not wrote it, published in 2008. So for debt to be a subject of a book in that year is pretty prescient and so on brand for Margaret Atwood. But what she does is basically talk about the concept of debt and how it acts on our psyche, how it exerts pressure on society, how it affects historical events, how it works as a plot device, major archetypes in literature that have hinged on debt. Debt as sin. So like when we think of being in debt as a sin, in the early views, it was always like it's a takes two to tango kind of thing. So the creditor is as sinful as the debtor, and we've lost that. But like fascinating sort of cross-cultural study of debt, and mostly European examples, but also some others. And then she concludes with like this really tongue-in-cheek sort of exploration about about okay, so she takes Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol and basically explores the idea of debt in that pretty thoroughly. And then she does an imaginary Christmas Carol that is like translated for the modern consumer, let us say. And that's why I say it's very silly because of the things she draws parallels between, and she's doing it in a humorous way. But it's also very profound in that she's turning it around so that you look at something that's very familiar in a very different way. And you're like, oh, is that what I look like from the back? Kind of feeling. So yeah, what else does it say? It's not about practical debt management or high finance. It's an investigation into the idea of debt as an ancient and central motif in religion, literature, and the structure of human societies. But y'all, it's less than 200 pages, so it's not like dry and dusty. It's very accessible language, and she meanders all over the place and like drops all these asides, and it's very entertaining. So I found this in a used bookstore, and if you find it, or if you see it on I don't know what's not owned by Amazon. I don't know, some shop or some sidewalk sale. I would snap it up because it was very interesting. So yeah, really good book, nonfiction. And then my next nonfiction, since this is the nonfiction half, is the one I got in the little free library, Urban Arboreal, a modern glossary of city trees. And this is the one that made me write a message to Catpaw on Instagram because I was like so inspired by one of the trees, and it said it was in Mexico City, and so I asked her if she'd seen it there. But let me show you. Shannon says, I had no idea that Atwood had written nonfiction, but I guess it makes sense that it's not a writing craft book. Why would that make sense? Because she doesn't like to talk about writing. She's one of the people who was on my ads for masterclass for like months, like almost a year. And I just kept skipping her face. And I was so annoyed with her big bad wolf because it just the same 5 seconds over and over again. Makes sense. Oh, okay. That's why you never heard of it. That's why it makes sense. Gotcha. I was like, does she not come across as a good writing teacher? No, I get it now. Okay. So this glossary of city trees that I found by Michael Jordan and Kelly Louise Judd, who I think is the illustrator. Basically, it's a really cool setup. So they have 2 pages for each tree, and they tell you the scientific name, the common name, and then a city where you can find a bunch of examples of these, or it's like well known for these. And then they have a few paragraphs about it, like how it grows, how you would recognize it, maybe like how it manifests in that culture, or like a legend, or how it came to be there. And then like pretty illustrations. Buenos Aires, Athens, Strasbourg. And I recognized a lot of them, but there was a significant chunk that I did not. So I was like, ooh, jacaranda. I have one of these in front of the house where I grew up. So it was just nice. I love plant ID books. I feel like the more I go through them and soak them up, the more I get to know a little bit about the differences in nature. And, there's nothing poisonous in here, I don't think. So things that might be able to help me in the future when society crumbles, just one of those. And then, Cat Paw is saying about Margaret Atwood. She has written a craft adjacent book too, and I've done her masterclass when it first came out. Oh, nice. Okay, so I don't know if you clicked on the ad, Cat Paw, or like accessed it somehow else, but I'm glad. I hope it was good. I hope it was helpful and rewarding. Yay. Okay, so the last one is also the overlay here. And this is the one that I didn't want to hold up because it's a very old book. This is the one I got from the library. And it came in. I almost forgot I'd asked for it. And these are just a couple pictures. So let's see. This one over here, that's the spine. And it's like gold swirly letters on a very old cloth spine. This one over here is the front. I actually took the sleeve off that you're not supposed to take off from Interlibrary Loan to show you the really pretty, like gorgeous cover. Again, it's like 150 years old, 160-year-old book. And then the other ones up here and down here are maybe 6 or 7 or 8 of these. I don't know if you call them frontispieces if they're in the middle, but paintings that have been reproduced somehow on print in this book with tracing paper over to preserve them, and they were of the people the book is about. So what book did I get? Why is it so pretty? Why is it so old? Well, it's a research book that I checked out from the library system because it had the early correspondence and letters both between and of Lady Stanley and her husband. So this is the first Baron Stanley. Anyway, it's this famous family that's very old, hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they had traditional land in Cheshire near Liverpool, and it was called Alderley Park. And I was telling Caitlin Bandy about this the other day, and she was getting excited. I looked at Wikipedia. Alderley Park So you know how these families just fall apart, like Downton Abbey. Alderley Park was eventually ruined. There was a guy in the 30s who had a bunch of gambling debts. He let the house catch on fire. He had 4 divorces in his life that were very expensive, and he had one by that time. But anyway, before the war, he had to sell it. They had to kick the tenants out. They had nowhere to go because the stuff was all worth more than they paid based on assessment from 100 years ago, you know? And so, sad story at the end of it, but it sold to AstraZeneca of all places. So it was like a drug company campus. It's like Bletchley Park, but for drugs. And I was like, what is this? Anyway, so this is the Stanley family, famous in history. Now AstraZeneca. And basically it's like late 18th century, early 19th century, well-to-do family that has connections in the west of Britain and in Ireland because of their responsibilities in tenantry. And I was wondering if there would be any mentions of the 1798 rebellion. There's like 2. She was not very concerned about it. We get like marriage letters between the husband and wife before they're married, and then mostly letters between the wife and her aunt, like for 20 years. 2 mentions. One was, "Oh yes, our tenant paid, so I guess he's not a rebel." And I'm impressed with the lack of worry expressed in these letters. She's very Mary in Downton Abbey, less worried sister, whatever her name is. And I'm just like, wow, I it, it's impressive. And then the other one was about the French coming to land and how they would be put out if it was going to keep going on for longer than they thought or something. I was like, wow, you really had a feeling of vulnerability. There wasn't any of this worry like the politician guy whose letters I read. So that was eye-opening, I will say. But not much other than that. I didn't read every letter, but I skimmed, and it's chronological, so I skimmed in the dates that I thought would be important, and that's all I got. Although some very interesting asides. And as I said, it's the tone and the witty turn of phrase that I'm really taking from this book. Otherwise, it's, as I was telling Shannon yesterday, pretty peripheral, just like a couple points. And I'll probably forget those by the time I could have included them in the work in progress. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Yeah, I get these library books because I go down a research rabbit hole and I want to hear from someone's point of view at a certain specific time. And, the books, there are no books with these people's correspondence. They're in museums, they're packed away in archives. So, like the institutions that have them in the library, one lone thing will come up and I'll be like, okay, I'll put in for that. And if it costs $0, I will, put in some time to read it and try to absorb that viewpoint. But I think because I'm drafting now, like I might try not to do that anymore. But yeah. So that's book 6. That's the nonfiction half. Mystery, romance, historical, and nonfiction, and trees. So that's a pretty good haul of new books this month. And then what was this? I was going to wrap up at the end. Okay. So how do cemeteries make you feel? And I'll go through the answers first so that like it can get you thinking before I give my reason for asking. Shannon said intrigued if they're old, sometimes bored if they are new. Interesting. What do you consider old? That's the next question, Shannon. And Anita says, I love cemeteries. No surprise there. In fact, August's Shadows and Ink podcast will be an interview with an author who wrote a book about cemeteries. Wow. There can't be that many of those. Huh. Very cool. Very cool. The cemeteries are interesting places, right? And this morning, because work, it was sort of crazy yesterday, and there were all these unresolved things. and I was waiting on other people to be able to do any of it, and I had this live stream at this time, so I was like, if I can't do it in the morning, I need to, like, take a break and not just keep focusing and refreshing and driving myself nuts because, like, my mind was just going too fast in too many different directions. So I went out, I went to get, Pips, donut, and chai, took myself on a little walk, and on the walk, there was a gate open into the cemetery that I had never been into before. I'd always just been by because it's not accessible. And I walked in, I was like, "Oh, cool. Cemetery's open. It's a nice place to walk. It'll be quieter, not so much traffic." That was true, but there was a guy with a stupid leaf blower while it was raining, and I'm like, my dude. Ugh, that is one of my if I rule the world, no leaf blowers ever. And especially in the rain. Like, what the fuck? No. But I walked around and there were grave markers, mostly flat plates in the grass and some headstones, and then a central section with a fence around it that had lots of headstones that were higher. But in the back, there was like a whole wall of buildings that sort of waved uh, in and out, and they had squares. And I went back to look, and they sort of started in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2022. Like they went the whole gamut. There were a few empty spaces. So I don't know how it works. But I was looking at all these and thinking, okay, so the font changes at some point. They decided that that was too old, and this is going to be like the new classic burial drawer marker font. I don't know. I don't know how to talk about any of this, but it was interesting. And I was noticing, um, people who are married together. That was a very interesting thing to notice. And I will remind myself, I took pictures. So um, lots of pretty flowers. And so this is what I mean by like rolling. The roof line sort of rolled from left to right, which was pretty, and I liked it. But like you have drawers like this, and I look at Verbisky, Arbuckle, Berry, and I look at the berry and I say, okay, there's the husband, and then there's no one on the other side, and the wife must be dead by now because he died in 1960. So that's 60 plus years ago. I don't think anyone would be alive at this point. Did she choose to be buried somewhere else after he died? Like there's a story there. So I was like walking around going, what's the story? Just kind of pretty, just like the wavy roof line. I'd never seen something like this before. And here's the other one that had me confused. There's a whole bunch of Yosts, which I'm guessing is a Germanic name. And then there's this one that was Shirley May Yost and householder. So it's not like a placeholder. It's someone who's buried there without a name. They're just known as householder. And it's 2007. And I'm like, what does that mean? My mind is going through all these things. Like, is that they didn't want to make a like relationship known? What? So confused is what's making me feel at this point. But I do like thinking about the stories and the relationships. And that was the cool part. And then the sad part was that like everyone is buried with their significant other. And so that was, of course, like not what I wanted to be thinking this morning on my own. What are we all going to do when we have to be buried or cremated or whatever? So that's the other thing I think about, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so Shannon says old is 100 years or more. So there were definitely people who were born in the 1800s. I think the latest or earliest I'd seen died was like 1860s, 1880s. It was a more modern cemetery, but I did like the architecture. I thought it had interest for that. Yes, Cat Paw. I didn't pin it, but it's at the very top of the chat, and there aren't a lot, so you could probably still access the top of the chat. Yeah, Jim says Heidegger suggested we should spend time in cemeteries to realize our own mortality. I think Heidegger is a philosopher. Realize our own mortality. for sure. That definitely does that. Um, One of the things that it's very surprising to learn, kind of like when you're thinking about debt, like with that Margaret Atwood book, is that people used to have more of a relationship with their ancestors who had died. And so cemeteries were green, rolling picnicking places. People would go there with picnics and, do honor to their dead, but then like stay for a party because you're together with family and why not celebrate? Which we think of as weird at this point because cemeteries are just for black Lincoln Town cars and widows with umbrellas in black. And that's all that we see in the movies anymore. So it's interesting to see like 100 years, it was very different. 200 years ago, it was very different. Um, and we don't like thinking about mortality at all. We don't even like thinking about getting older anymore. So like it's probably a bit of whiplash if you go looking for it. Jim says Père Lachaise in Paris is a fascinating cemetery with Edith Piaf, Maria Callas, Oscar Wilde, Jim Morrison, Balzac, etc. Oh, Jim, I been to Père Lachaise? I don't think I have. I was right next to Montparnasse, and so I saw plenty of Montparnasse Cemetery on my walks. But I haven't read Balzac, but I'm starting like a vlog, like a project to look into 19th century French writers, and I've got 3 that I'm going to be reading and comparing. And yeah, it's probably going to be like a 2-month project, but I'm interested in a Balzac somewhere, and I haven't decided on which one yet. So let me know if you have opinions. Cat Paw says, love old English cemeteries, newer ones, not so much. Yeah, it's the patina of distance, I think. We didn't know those people. They had different rituals. Like, it's picturesque now rather than, oh, I'm actually going to have to talk to one of these and like learn about the legal ramifications. One of the things I was wondering about when I was walking around is like, how much do you pay to get a drawer to be buried in and your name on the front? Like, some of these had flowers. I think too many of them had flowers for it to be people. I think it might be the cemetery doing that. But like, how much do you pay for them to do that in perpetuity? Is there a time limit? And it didn't look like it. So it, I mean, I don't know, $20,000 is going to run out after what, 10 years? I don't know. Maybe my money sense is just very off. It's weird to think about. Catpaw says, I'm clairaudient and clairsentient. Need I say more about the cemeteries? So that means hearing things supernaturally and feeling things supernaturally. So maybe a cemetery is a place where you get lots of stimulation or messages. Oh, Shannon says maybe she married someone else and was married next to the new husband. Possible. Possible. Is there a resale market for burial spaces? I mean, there's got to be, right? This is America. But like, yeah, these empty squares, like, it's just a weird, untold tale. It's weird. Oh, Shannon's off to the dentist appointment. Nice to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Jim says, I want to leave my body to the medical university so I can continue teaching after I've passed. Wow. Wow. That's a commitment. That means you have faith in students in the future, Jim. I'm impressed. Catpaw says, I love to be composted, the ultimate giving back some mulch to the earth. I saw, what did I see it or read about it? No, I read about it in a book, but it was only one small piece. I think it was a climate book that I talked about. And one of the first chapters was about this composting, human composting. And I was like, what? It's super expensive at the moment. And it's just in a trial phase in Washington State. But that's very exciting. That's very exciting. I like that idea too, Catpaw. Jim says, in Georgia, we take food and wine to eat at the cemetery and toast the departed. Well, there you go. So some cultures are still doing that, and it makes sense to me. Excuse me. Jim says, I read Père Goriot by Balzac and hated it. Oh, haven't read Zola or Flaubert yet. Yeah. So I'm reading Zola by ear at the moment, and it's very interesting. But yeah, I was telling Dee Dee of Brown Girl Reading that I really can't tell the difference. I sort of lump them all together in like realism, naturalism, romanticism movements, and I have much less clarity around what separates the big novelists in French literature in the 19th century. So I should uh, I should correct that situation. Cat Paw says, search for Recompose, now legal in 10 US states. Oh, okay. Well, that's a good lead. Thank you, Cat Paw. So, yeah, that was just my interesting thoughts from this morning and my little walk. And then I did my errands and came back and was like rushing because I thought I would be late. And then I had like 7 whole minutes. It's fine. It was all good. Oh, okay, good. Good recommendation here. Cat Paw's asking Jim, what do you recommend by Flaubert for a newbie? I mean, if you're not going to go with Madame Bovary, what will Jim choose? I am curious. The Zola I'm reading right now is called Money, and it's about stockbrokers and speculators. So I can guess where it's going to go, but like I'm only 17% in, and there's a lot going on. Everyone has their vision for the world, which is kind of exhausting to listen to. Jim says, I haven't read Flaubert, but Kafka loved L'éducation sentimentale, a sentimental, I think it's translated as a sentimental education. Kafka loved it. Interesting. Interesting. All right. So that is my wrap up for today, for Wednesday's wrap up. I will have our final Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, as per usual. We'll do a 2-hour productivity sprint. So if you want to come join for that, I'll be doing that on Friday morning, and then back to regularly scheduled Sundays and Wednesdays for Bookish Opinions. And I can feel it coming back, so I'm going to hop off and get some more hot tea so that my allergies calm down. So thanks for coming by, everybody. Happy reading and take care. Bye.